Good morning and afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to today's session, Workforce Without Walls. My name is Max Smith. I'm the Director of Communications for 501c Services. We're a 100% employee-owned company, and we provide full-service unemployment outsourcing and human resources support to more than 3,000 nonprofits. Some of our programs include the 501c Agencies Trust and 501c HR Services. Many of you all here today are already working with us, and we really appreciate you doing so. I'm going to go over a couple of quick questions that you all have before I hand this off to Joe, and he talks about total rewards in today's workforce. The slide deck is going to be distributed via email after this program. So if you need that, we will get that to you later today. There will also be a video recording of this that you all will get access to later today. So please keep a lookout for that. If you're here for some SHRM or HRCI credits, you know the drill. Following the program, you'll have that poll pop up. Answer that for us real quick. Let me know which credit you need, both or one, and I will get that to you. If you need to head off to lunch or a meeting or something, you'll have access to that poll again later today in our follow-up email. So you just fill that out for me later today. I will get that to everybody probably tomorrow about this time. So other than that, that should answer everything. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to my friend Joe Torriello from Hub International. He's been working with employers on their total rewards programs for, what are we doing, Joe, 20 years, 25 years now?
You couldn't tell that from my gray hair, but yes, maybe I started when I was in high school, from what I understand.
There you go. So basically, he's a total rewards expert. So he's going to walk us through what everything looks like today and what you guys can be doing to make your programs stronger. Go ahead, Joe.
Thanks, Mac. I really appreciate it, and welcome everybody. Today, I'd really like to think it's our program together. I wish we were together live and could do this in a seminar format, but we have webinar, which is great. I hope you guys are not completely zoomed out and will find an opportunity to interact with us through chat. Again, I wish we could do this live, but let's make this as interactive as possible and find an opportunity to answer any questions that you might have as we go. If anybody's interested as a follow-up, I'm happy to answer questions or engage in a conversation. And my background really is a little bit wider than just the concept of total rewards. I think if you're in benefits, you've got to I don't want to say be the master of none, but be the generalist along all lines. But we definitely have folks that go much deeper than I do. But total rewards, in my mind, has become a huge opportunity, huge topic for everybody. I have been doing this for about 33 years. So I've been in the industry. I've always been in benefits. I've spent my career there, both on the carrier side and on the consulting side. And that's where I am today with Hub International. I run benefits for the East. And I also have my day job, which is running benefits for Northeast, which includes New York, New Jersey, PA, and Connecticut. I've always loved benefits, and to me, one of the great things about it is that it really does represent an opportunity for people to think a little bit more widely about the employees and what they're thinking and how they're gauging their career opportunities. And so benefits is one aspect of it. When you get into total rewards, it goes a little bit wider. So we're going to talk about all that today. Again, if we can make it interactive, if you have chat opportunity, by all means, please let me know if there are questions that you'd like me to address or maybe get other people to respond to. One last comment. You probably are thinking about something that maybe somebody that's joining us today is also thinking about. So there really are no, I don't want to say dumb questions, but there's no question that we don't want to address, because chances are somebody on this is thinking exactly the same thing you are. But I want to start with the framing of when we said, would you like to join us? And for whatever reason, what we said seemed to spark an interest. So let's talk a little bit more about that. So more than a year, and I'm sure a lot of people didn't think it'd be going on 2 years, but more than a year after the coronavirus precipitated a seismic shift in where and how many employees do their jobs, employers are struggling with, and struggling is a tough word, but I think that there's a pivotal question when we return to the new normal. What does that look like? And what strikes me as really interesting is we went into the pandemic without any strategy whatsoever. We just had to react. We just had to figure it out. And people did it really well. But if you think about year 2K, I don't know how many of you were around then. Some of you may be, just in the early part of your career. But I was one of the guys that said, hey, listen, New Year's Eve, I'm happy to just make sure that I can turn the computers on at work and everything's operational. And we didn't have a lot of email back then. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic between where we were and where we are today. But everything worked fine. Everybody thought the banks would fall apart and we would not be able to run our computers or our lives, and it worked fine. But I think we're there now, right? So that's one of the things I want to talk about and think about is somehow we were able to pick everybody up. We didn't have 2 years of planning. We didn't have 10,000 consultants all trying to figure out the world. We said, on Tuesday, you got to work from home, and we figured it out. So just keep in mind that we were able to make a huge transition very quickly. And over the last year, people have had now, and actually a year and a half, people have had time to really fit into a very new world. And so things have changed. We want to give that context some import. And I think it's really this: are we working from home or are we sleeping at work? And somebody said that to me a couple of months ago, and I said, that's a really, really interesting way of thinking about the world today, because it really has blurred. And so we've created a new practice focus that's called a workforce without walls. Just imagine the world very differently and frame it from a strategic point of view as opposed to a tactical, right? Tactical meaning I want everybody back to work, and we're going to work 3 days a week, but we're going to do it every other Tuesday and on Wednesdays. And so it became a very, very tough challenge, not for everybody. And there are certainly frontline workers that have dealt with this from the beginning. But I think anybody that has taken the position that we're going to allow people a little bit more flexibility or to work from home, reintegration is not an easy task. And so this concept of workforce without walls says, we've got to be a little bit more strategic about what we're trying to accomplish. So if I'm in the office, why am I there? If I'm out of the office, what am I going to do to continue to build culture? And I say that because the good news is I think work is getting done. From everybody I've talked to, it seems like in most industries and most companies, the work is getting done. And we know that there are some industries that have been hard hit: hospitality, retail, certainly not without the challenges. But the good news is for a lot of companies, a lot of organizations, the good news, I think, is over and over again what I'm hearing: work's getting done. The concern I think we're all sharing is, but at what cost? And I think we know that mental wellness has been one of the challenges that's gotten a lot of attention, a lot of stress cracks. And that's what I would ask you to think about, is we're getting the work done. People have changed. What's it going to be that are going to keep people in their seats going forward? How are we going to keep them invigorated about the job that they do? And if we can't connect them culturally because we're all together, how are we going to reach them in a wider way? So as you think about that, today's workforce consists of as many as 5 different generations. That 5 generations each has its own sensibility about what it needs and what it wants. And so if you've been building this one-size-fits-all environment, you probably know that right now that's not working. As people have worked outside the office, there's been a level of independence, I think, that's been achieved, if you will, that we've got to think about as well. So a lot of interesting things coming back together. But if you think about it, fresh-faced new hire may seek greater organizational visibility than can be achieved in a virtual environment. A lot of people might think that the Generation Z wants to work from home, and the reality is, that Z probably wants the CEO job. Sorry if there's any CEOs on the call. Your job is in jeopardy. It's going to be the guy or gal that you just hired who's 22. But the Generation Z group is one that may want to be visible at work because they do want to know that they're being seen and that their contributions are valued. And so how are we going to create an understanding of what each of our employees are seeking if we want to keep our best and brightest engaged? How do we identify and recruit and retain new talent to the organization? So let's understand what we're doing. And again, if you think about that middle stage professional, they've got family obligations. They may be placing an even greater value on the workplace without walls than anybody else, but there may be another level of frustration because, and I don't know if you're finding it in your environment, but are people working without pause? Are people working without vacations, or certainly at the pace that they used to? And so some of those things may be really important to give consideration to. But exit the traditional combination of compensation and benefits when you think about total rewards, and think about that idea of workplace flexibility, or as we say, the workforce without walls, recognizing that there's a new set of expectations. And not the least of which is don't refer to your employees as employees. They probably don't want to be known as employees. They want some other sensibility. So we'll call them associates, right? They're associates. And if you think about other organizations, I think everybody's challenged by that same set of constructs. So I just wanted to lay out what we're going to talk about today. We could probably end the webinar here. I hope people don't click out. But I think those are some of the foundational concepts that I wanted to make sure that we cover as we go through the presentation. Other than everything, what's changed in the past year? Can anybody think of 3, 4, 6, 10,000 things? I think the reality is that we know that things have changed. So what should we expect from our conversation today? Lots of discussion, chat. I wish it were discussion, but lots of chat, deep thought, and I hope some fun. We're going to look at some big trends. We're going to look at some small ones. We'll talk about some pretty obvious stuff, and hopefully we're going to have a couple of aha moments along the way. So again, please chat as you want. Let me cover a couple of items in the agenda, some tough but important questions to answer, how the numbers drive a total rewards construct, the employee value proposition, and we're going to talk about that quality experience. What does it look like, and how do we drive that? Building a meaningful EVP, and then wrap up and takeaways. And certainly along the way, if you've got any questions, let me know. But I noticed that we have a very diverse range of attendees from HR to ops to finance. So I'm hopefully going to cover this topic in a way that's not going to feel completely biased in the HR direction or completely biased in terms of financial modeling. It's going to be, I hope, a broadcast of a couple of different items and different strategies that all merge to say, how do we all work together using data, using technology, using our thought process to make sure that we recraft our thinking in terms of how we meet our employees where they live. So let's start with some tough but important questions. And first, how many of us have an employee value proposition? And again, I can't see you raising hands, but for those of you who do, how many of you do? And how many do you believe could articulate that EVP within your organization? How many employees could actually articulate what that EVP is? So either way, it could have been time to dust it off and to rethink it. But who believes that it would be the same today as it was 6 months or a year or 2 years ago? And I think that's really one of the key messages today is how do we make sure that we're thinking about where we are and where we're heading. Average annual cost of healthcare per person is it $9,500, $12,000, $16,000, $17,000 for, or smart car for 2? And again, depending on where you are geographically, this number can vary. We're seeing it right around 16,000. It's interesting because SHRM had a projection, at least one of the topics that was mentioned last year, that it was expected to rise by almost 5.5% in 2021 and could hit the 15.5 mark. We're seeing it right around 16, so we're pretty consistent. But here's the question is, does the employee know what you're spending, right? So we're back to this mindset of they could have lots of great benefits. And the question is, do they understand it? Are they engaged? Are they communicating? Do they care? And how do we get them to care? And what do they care about? And then finally, when we think about it and you see the little note on the right, as the pandemic recedes, millions of workers are saying, I quit. And we've got somebody that retired recently, and we knew he was going to retire, and I was on the phone with him, and he retired a little bit earlier than we thought. I said, what happened? And the long and short of it was, he just said, I can't do it anymore. I love this business, but I lost my sister to COVID, and I'm 62, and I wanted to wait a couple of more years, but you know what? I'm going to enjoy and I'm going to change. So there was a mind shift that I saw in him, but he was very close to retirement age, and for him, it was easy to pull the trigger a little bit sooner. I'd ask you to think about, in your organization, are there any of your top performers that may be thinking, I love this industry, I love what I'm doing, I just can't keep doing it the same way anymore. And I'm not sure that's COVID-related stress, but is there just a change in the stress level? Is there just a change in the way people are thinking? And so that pandemic, talking about it receding, I think is a really good way of thinking about it, because it was a wave, right? And it's a big wave. And it didn't just come in and recede. It came in, it washed up, it receded, then it came back again. And we could argue now it's as or more aggressive than it was the first time. So it feels to me that we're going to see more of, and obviously we're calling it from an industry perspective, the great resignation. And so what is it going to take to keep people? Is it going to be that comprehensive medical plan? I mean, we just talked about it being 16,000 in some parts of the country, probably 20,000 in others, maybe 12 to 15. But the idea is, if we land somewhere in that 16,000, that's a lot of money that people may not see as the only thing they care about. So is it comprehensive medical? Is it base comp? Is it financial incentives? Is it innovative lifestyle benefits? What about mental wellness programs? All of the above, none of the above, or bottom line, will any of it really be enough to stem the tide in what we're seeing, certainly in some pockets? And perhaps benefits and compensation share the front seat when employees are choosing an employer or to stay with an employer. But are we going to have to embrace that workforce without walls concept, that we're not as worried about where you're working, we're more worried about creating the connectivity, finding the engagement level, and making sure that we're talking a similar conversation. When you think about it, it really gets to the heart of, how do I embrace that individual employee need, right? So it's not just that we're going to create this environment, it's understanding that everybody within the environment may think very differently about it. I talked about the individual retiring, but it doesn't mean that this is an individual retiree issue. It could be individuals that have different family issues going on. So let's think strategically and creatively about the pockets of people that we're talking about, where we go with it. But there's a lot of other questions, that we want to talk about as well. And some of them may be a little bit more hair raising. Even within an all-in total rewards environment, what does it mean to the 5% that are dealing with chronic illness and probably driving 50% of your costs? Can we really reach them the same way? Will it be as meaningful? Maybe for them, benefits is the most important thing, but even within that, they're so challenged by what they're dealing with a chronic illness that maybe there's more going on there. How are we addressing absence, occupational, non-occupational? Do executive and voluntary benefits need to be part of the mix? And I would argue they definitely do. In fact, one of the things that we would ask you to think about, especially in the nonprofit segment, is benefits have always been traditionally very important. Has the pandemic changed the way people think about their benefits? Or do we need to enhance it? Do we need to downplay medical and start looking at lifestyle and other benefits that are as or more important than the base medical program? Especially if, as you look at your new workforce, what age group are they coming from? So we want this generational perspective to be kept in mind. As I said earlier, 5 generations in the workforce, how are they thinking about benefits? How are they thinking about compensation? And one of the things I'll share with you today is a concept I built around this benefits ribbon. If you're going to tackle your benefit component of a total rewards environment, I think this is going to be helpful. So today, I'm going to share a couple of thoughts around what's the model for building your comp component, what's your model for building your total rewards, and then within that, what's the benefits ribbon look like? And then the general context overlaying everything is, where does that concept of a workforce without walls fit in? How important is it when you recruit young talented individuals or that mid-age worker, those with family, to have the flexibility that maybe the pandemic has brought? Or are they looking for something where they can be working with people? Maybe the isolationism has been more of a challenge and they're looking to get back to an environment where there's a close culture of people working together. Lots of stuff to consider. So let's talk about the numbers. I did promise that I would make sure that anybody that might come in from a CFO perspective, that we can use some numbers to understand and put some understanding around how the impact might be from a data-driven perspective. And I'll throw out another concept. A lot of people talk about big data, which I love, but I always talk about the organization's numbers. So it might be big data, but I'm more worried about your data than I am about big data. Big data is great for comparative. Big data is great for benchmarking. But when it comes right down to it, you've got a lot of really good data within your 4 walls that we want to spend time on. So we talked about this before, nonprofits getting the value from the 10% more that you're probably spending on benefits than all other employers combined. So is it time to change our approach, or should we at least consider an alternative path? Something to think about. So the benefits ribbon, let's start here. I talked about that a minute ago. It really says that should we start thinking about creating a little bit more cost certainty and an Amazon-like shopping experience, so that if what I really want to buy is a low-end medical but a lot more voluntary benefits, then I've got a path for doing it. Conversely, if I want a richer benefit plan on the medical that's more expensive, maybe the other benefits are not as important. And if you think about, a millennial or a Z, they're probably more worried about the cost of college. How do I fund that? So that college debt load that they're shouldering may be something to think about. So total rewards starts to shift even when you think about benefits. So what's my concept with the benefits ribbon? Benchmark your plan, compare it to what would be a robust benefits ribbon, and then right size your plan accordingly. So many of you may have something that looks like this, an HSA and then a core and then a buy up or an enhanced, or maybe you have an HSA or two HSAs and you buy up from there. Maybe there's only one or two plans, but the idea is that when you have that, your executives are probably seeing a gap. And so the question is, how do I think about that gap? And then the second part, obviously, is your staff. What does that worker really need? What are they thinking about? What keeps them up at night? What keeps your executives up at night? So maybe what we need to do is look at those gaps and then expand the ribbon. So that's step number one. Let's expand the ribbon to increase employee choice and improve cost. The second thing and when I say improve cost, the way we do that is you'll find that a lot of times that younger worker that isn't spending a lot of money is going to pick a benefit plan that's less expensive. And we're going to have to figure out what to do about some of the older individuals that are on the plan. But some of them may be eligible for Medicare and staying on your plan. So you may want to think about educating them on Medicare. We've got some strategies for that. We don't have the time to spend today on it. But if you have questions, certainly give me a call, reach out. But that Medicare population, we have to be careful about how we help them understand the advantages of Medicare. We can't incentivize them. We can't really force them into Medicare, but we can certainly educate them on whether or not a Medicare Advantage plan might be as good or better when you look at the pricing of the plan and the benefits that are offered, and maybe some of the advantaged benefits that come with that as well. So something to consider when you think about the benefits ribbon. Who are the constituents and what's going to be important to them? So the first thing, we expand the ribbon. Then we think about addressing executive risk, that disability, life insurance, long-term care, that may be needs that are not being met today. So they typically would buy the richer benefit on the medical and maybe add some of these other benefits so that there's income replacement should they be disabled or die. And then for the individual that is coming to work every day and saying, how's my employer thinking about me? Maybe we're using voluntary or lifestyle, as we like to call, benefits to address the generational needs of all other employees. And that changes, right? What I care about at 25 is very different than what I care about at 35 or 55, or as I said with Medicare, 65, depending on spouse. But really important context. And then maybe we consider a defined contribution platform completely, and maybe even ICRA for some of you might be something that you're thinking about. This is what it looks like when you think about your executives, what keeps them up at night. So again, think about total rewards. What do my executives want? I don't want my total rewards program to be lopsided, right? Because I need to think about the fact that I can't discriminate on medical towards those individuals, but I can and need to in terms of protecting them and their families in the event of that death or disability. So applying an individual strategy for income replacement makes sense. And so the exhibit on the left gives you an idea of, you run the data, you look at those that are covered by your existing plan on a group basis, and then you identify the green, which means we're in good shape. And anybody in the red category is falling outside, and then we can help identify, is that the CEO, CFO, is it the executive director, others. You may want to look at it. And the bigger your population, the more skewed the results might look, as you see in the chart to the right. And then voluntary set, what keeps the employees up at night? Voluntary benefits programs offers benefits that, these are kind of the traditional thinking, but what's trending? Student loan repayment programs, pet insurance on the rise. We're seeing more and more. Identity theft protection at 70%. We see it growing 73% on critical illness. That tends to be the one that's most popular. And then finally, when we see things like Equifax's massive data breach back in 2017, it just keeps reminding us that those data breaches happen all the time. And we don't want to be on the wrong side of that as an individual. So those are the things that we see a lot of employers thinking about. But there are two key elements that are missing, and after this, I'll pause, see if there's any questions. But what are the two elements to consider when you're thinking about the program? When you're thinking about, I want to communicate spousal HRA and waiver programs. I talked about ICRA, paternity benefits, domestic partners, the concept around Me Too and making sure that we're considering DEI initiatives in a serious way, salary banding, parental benefits, leave, adoption assistance, right? These are all very, very different. That concept around holistic PTO policies. And let us not forget, ping pong tables for all. And when you think about ping pong tables for all, that's sort of a generic way of saying, is the worker really going to want to see things from our lens or through our lens, or do they have a very different lens that we need to understand? And does this need to be what the work environment looks like if people are going to be at work? And when we're there, what are we doing? How are we building that strong basis for culture? And I just snapped a couple of pictures that I thought would be, good examples of where, that question really resonates. But is that really for everybody? Is that really going to resonate for all, or is it going to resonate for a few? So we've got to really be mindful about what's important to individuals, and perhaps what the key generational elements are that are missing from the conversation, and that's engagement and communication. So how are we going to engage all of our employees? How are we going to communicate with them are going to be very different. Again, if you think about that, as I said earlier, 25, 35, 55, 65, I hear the messages differently, I communicate them differently, I engage in a very, very different way. And so Total Rewards needs to also recognize that there's a difference in that generational. So market trends, consideration for multi-generational workforce. Let me pause there. Mac, do we have any questions or any comments so far?
No, not so far. I mean, I can tell through the system that you have a very engaged audience. Everybody's paying attention, but we don't have any questions yet. So
okay,
we may need to give them a second to breathe.
Okay, I will take that as a small but important win. So if you guys are engaged and you're enjoying this, that's the only thing I was hoping to accomplish today. I hope that I'm answering your questions as I'm going. But if there is something, please don't hesitate. So let's talk about personalized or lifestyle-based, multi-generational. Those are some terms I'd like you to walk away with and think about today that we should become comfortable with. How do we think about our workforce? How will align our corporate culture and human capital management? And if you think about the number of employees today that do not want to be known as employees, they want to be associates. They probably have a different sensibility that they want to be treated as individuals. And the fact that we put everybody into that sort of lemmings category is a real danger. And so how do we do that, and what's the value of doing it? And I did promise some data, so let's go through a couple more slides. I'm going to inject a couple of different stats that may be helpful in thinking about this as well. But consider millennial growth. 50% of the workforce was projected by 2020. A lot of the companies that we work with, we've seen that they've accelerated way past the 50% by 2020, 75% by 2025. I don't see any way we're not going to hit that kind of a number in most of the industries, and I think that's really important. But keep in mind the emergence of Gen Z and the fact that we've got the 5 generations all in the workforce, and what we say to one, or that idea of one size fits all, really doesn't fit all. In fact, it fits none. And so the possibility of alienating key people becomes more and more likely as we look at the number of generations and the number by generation that are in your workforce. Total rewards becomes more important when you think about engagement strategies, but whether it's incremental or all in, has to include that understanding of the generational dynamics of your workforce. And I'd also say that concept of not just benefits and comp, but that workforce without walls. It's no longer a two-legged stool. Oh, we're talking about comp and benefits. Now we're talking a little bit wider, and it might have been time off, but we've got a whole new thing that we've got to think about. In fact, I think people are struggling with what is time off. My days are blurred. My life is blurred. My work-life balance is blurred. And so communication is also going to be important. So I'd ask the question, how many of us has the cell phone number of every employee and spouse, if applicable? Because I'm not so sure we're able to reach them without that kind of information. And that's probably become more obvious today than it was, again, 2 years ago. And I've used this same question in presentations I've done for probably the last 2.5, 3 years, because to me, it was a trend that I saw coming, and one that a lot of people have dealt with, but others have not. I think, unfortunately, the pandemic has forced us to realize cell phone is probably one of the only ways that we can reach them. And then would you consider employee incentives for providing them if not already? And I'm not sure that's even appropriate anymore, but I asked the question because I do believe that we've got to think differently about how we're communicating. It's got to be two-way, it's got to be interactive, it's got to be live. And if we're thinking about Gen Z, if it's not via a smartphone, they are probably not going to be seeing it unless you're communicating via TikTok or one of the other social media outlets. You're probably not reaching that group the same way. So something to consider as you go forward. This is one of the ways that we look at a generational tie together for a customer or for somebody that we're talking to about where you are today and what you're trying to accomplish, even if it's in a perspective mode. Just think in terms of those populations, and we can go deeper. I've not built it in here with Z because this really was to say, let's focus on that millennial expectation. But I would say that, if you're building this model, I would definitely add Z to it. But for purposes of this example, I think it's really important to focus on these 4 categories. And what's really interesting is we've started to see a shift in whether or not people understand what their population looks like. And so a recent newly awarded nonprofit client analysis, they were surprised in HR that they were 85% X and M, X and millennial. And so, the millennials being even significantly larger at 295 versus the 172, but only in about 85% of the population. When they looked at how they were communicating in their total rewards program, they said, yeah, we've really got to rethink this. And they really weren't thinking a lot about Z, but we've added that to the conversation. And I'll share that as we go through it. But the idea is when you do that generational gap analysis in a total rewards environment, you're thinking about that traditionalist who says, I'm not ready to retire, right? That's traditional. I'm not so sure post-pandemic that's the same. I think a lot more people are more ready to retire than they were. But keep that in mind. What's changed about the paradigms that we may have thought about? Baby boomers, if you change my benefits, you'll hear from me. Gen Xers, let me do it my way. And then millennials, I'm worried about my finances. I'm worried about the future. I've got the weight of the world on my shoulders. And by the way, like my Z counterparts, I want to be the CEO in the first 6 months of employment. But it's changed over the last 1 year, 2 years, and certainly the last 5 years. And if you think about the way that we're tailoring our communication, same thing. When were you born? What percentage of the workforce? Who are they? How do they think? How do they want to hear from you? And what do they want? But I think that what's really interesting is if you think about the evolution over time, it's moved from that physical contact to it's got to become much more virtual. And this is something that I would have been preaching a year ago, and now we're there. And the question is, have we kept pace with that as we think about how we're going to reintegrate everybody back into the workforce? So let's talk about quality employee experiences. How do you go deeper in today's value proposition? First and foremost, can you infuse your employer brand promise and employee candidate experiences? You sure can. So know and share what makes your company unique. What's your strong total reward strategy? Why would somebody want to be part of your team? Make a pitch that's on their human level, right? It's not a sweeping statement. It's really, how do I reach individuals? Boost employee engagement. Bring out the best in your people. Stand out to potential future employees, and improve talent acquisition and retention. And I would argue that all of those things lead to that last point, but you really want to create an environment where people really do love coming to work and really do love the people that they see around them. And the question is, how are we going to do that when we're virtual? So we've got to create those sensibilities today, but recognize we're also trying to plan to get people back. I think most of us who are all in to support this concept of a workforce without walls recognize that the reason it's worked so well is because we had a strong culture coming into the pandemic. And I think we're all questioning, how do we sustain that same level of culture connectivity that we had that held us together for so long? And how do we get people back working in a way that's safe, in a way that's thoughtful, in a way that we're really focused on engaging them together. And then finally, how do we, through all of that, optimize our recruiting effort? And how do we minimize the cost? I'm not so sure there's an easy way of reducing costs. I think right now it's got to be an investment. There are fewer employees to go around for a much greater number of employers that are trying to find that terrific talent. What's the value? Organizations that fail to deliver a strong EVP struggle to attract critical talent. 65% of candidates leaving a hiring process due to an unattractive EVP. 30 years ago, 40 years ago would have been, do you offer dental? My parents said, if you offer dental, I'm in. And so it was probably an easier time, but we didn't have a lot of compliance and regulatory, challenge, and the world was a little bit simpler. Our jobs have all changed dramatically. We're all doing probably 5 jobs. If we were live, I'd say, if you're in HR or you're the CFO, is it only one job? Raise your hand if you do only one job. So if you want to have fun at home, raise your hand if you do only one job. Raise your hand, keep it up. If you do more than 3 jobs, keep it up if you do more than 5 jobs. And it's fun when you do it in a room full, because I'm guessing each one of you have your hands up, that everybody's doing 5 or more jobs, and you're expected to do them all really well. We'll talk about that in a second. But that EVP has to be attractive to labor markets and employees, and it reaches 50% deeper into labor markets to attract that passive candidate, right? You're going to say something to them that somebody else is not going to reach them with. Decreases annual employee turnover by 69%. And by the way, these are Gartner stats if you wanted to get some of the stats and the background on it, and increases new hire commitment by 29%. So we don't believe that a commitment to a total rewards environment is spending money without a return on investment. We firmly believe that there's a return on the investment when you do it the right way and you really listen to your people. Even at the end of the day, if you don't have a formal EVP and you don't go all the way into an all-in total rewards environment, the exercise is really critical. That if you understand your value and you don't get quite to the end game, the building, the construction along the way is really, really helpful. So historically, benefits and rewards employees receive in exchange for their contribution. The value and experience afforded, I sound like 50s guy, right? Value and experience afforded by the organization. A unique set of offerings that positive, you get the idea, built around your core mission and vision, what matters most to employees, designed to establish and reinforce the market's image of the organization's vision, culture, etc. All really important. And the question is, depending on how you say it, does it resonate for that employee? So let's reimagine it. Rewards that an employer provides its workforce in exchange for the work provided. Let's throw that away and think a little differently. Could we talk about an ecosystem of support, recognition, rewards, and values that an employer provides to its workforce in exchange for the work provided? Perhaps we don't even say that. Perhaps what we say is that corresponds with employees' needs and helps them to realize their highest potential in life and at work, which again might be completely blurred. And post-pandemic, those lines become blurred as we evolve into a workforce without walls. And so if you think about my earlier comment, are we working from home, or are we sleeping at work? Hopefully not at the same time, right? I hope people aren't sleeping while they're supposed to be on a conference call, but there's a lot of great commercials that sort of joke about that. And yes, if I stood up, I do have a full dress on today. So, we don't have to go there, but I know that everybody loves those commercials when people are just caught off guard because they're in a virtual environment. That's the other thing I want to sort of plant here is we want to be careful about how people get more relaxed when they're writing emails. Are they getting a little too relaxed when they're speaking virtually? So how do we make sure that we're giving coaching and training to a workforce that's changed? So it changes the dynamic. And when you think about some of the things you provide in a total rewards environment, some of it's training and education. But in any case, this is what we would argue might be a reimagination of the way to think about an employee value prop. And I think it's the thing in the middle of the page that's most important. Corresponds with employees' needs and helps them to realize their highest potential in life and at work. It's a really good way to think about how do you engage them and let them understand you're doing it for their best good. It's defined around people, not employees. Should provide an exceptional life experience, not just an employment experience. Again, I'm not sure it's ping pongs at work, but you get the idea. Let's understand a little bit better. Delivers features and feelings that match employee needs. Employees as people, not workers. Delivers a positive emotional response. And 82% of employees say it's important for their organization to see them as a person, not just as an employee. So again, if you start to feel that this gets a little squishy, I'd like to encourage you to think about the fact that, again, I'm not encouraging you to say go all the way from point A to point Z and you've got to fill in all the gaps, but asking these questions right now at a particularly tough, sensitive time for employees, I think connecting with them on an emotional, personal level, individual level is more important now than ever before, because we can't put the arm around the shoulder and say, hey, great job. And I don't mean that literally, figuratively. You know, we're saying you're doing a great job, but it changes if you see it on TV, and I'm on TV, right? You see me communicating as you do watching Everybody Loves Raymond, but we've got to make sure that people see it, feel it, that's palpable. So keep in mind that virtual experience, people have gotten very comfortable, which is great. I'm guessing for those of you that look at who you're interacting with, there are clients or maybe sponsors or supporters, and you're able to communicate with them in a virtual environment. But does it really replace the ability to understand what they're going through and who they are? Does it really replace even those lunches that we might have so that we can share what's going on in our lives and have a personal connection? So this is a great way to communicate, but are there other opportunities for creating that better match and that better opportunity for us to connect, especially with those that we want to recruit and attract? So with that, as we said, everybody's probably saying the same thing, right? We want to recruit and retain top talent. We have a plan to develop our people. We want to retain our finest associates. That's no question what everybody's saying. But does everyone go a little bit further and say, I really know and understand my people. I consider every person's needs. And I do understand that one size fits all fits none. And I can do it from a comp basis. I can do it from a benefits basis. I can do it from a flexibility perspective. And I think when we understand those various components, attracting and retaining the best is going to be a lot more possible. Here's an example. This is how we typically see the life cycle of an employee. There are distinct things that go on in their lives that are triggers: marriage, buying a home, maternity, adoption, death of a family member. All those things that trigger a traditional thing that we're doing from a financial perspective or from an HR perspective. But when you think about it, it really does blur even more into a number of things that are impacting them and what they're seeing at home that impacts their ability to perform at work. And now that they're living at home and working at home, that blurred environment becomes even more important. It becomes part of the individual that you're coaching. You've probably met dogs you never knew before. You're probably seeing kids that you would have loved to have met, and you're getting to see them. And again, there are some great commercials with I think a mom who's talking, and then she's trying to block her kid from being on the screen. And it's just fun to watch that. I think we've all become very comfortable in a virtual environment. But here's what's going on behind the scenes as you look at what I've got up on the screen. A lot of different concerns. So let's reframe our dialogue. Let's simplify and save money. Let's improve what we're going to do to develop our people. And then finally, let's cherish and demonstrate how we feel about our finest associates. Sometimes that thank you is more important. Sometimes sending that email and copying the CEO so that they know their voice is being heard and their accomplishments are being seen and valued becomes a huge motivator. It might be the benefits that we offer. It could be, as I said before, self-improvement, mental health, mental well-being. Maybe they're dealing with caregiver support. Maybe they need some career coaching, right? There's different ways of reaching people that will tell them I care about them, and it could be less expensive than spending money on a very rich benefits program that half of your people don't know about and don't care about. And then finally, cherish and demonstrate recognition programs, motivation. How do we look at an opportunity for people to explore who they are and come back, a better candidate and a long-term employee because we've invested in them? Is there danger? Is there risk? No question, no question. But there's little reward typically I find in life without some level of risk. Even a small risk to get a big reward is probably a risk that needs to be taken. Is there another way to see my workforce? That's probably what you're thinking. So what's this magical lens? And you can't manage what you don't understand. So again, flipping in and making sure that we're not just talking about the softer side of what we do and how we think about our employees. What are those generational lenses that we can look at? So we've created a way of thinking about your employees that we think is very, very different. It's a proprietary platform, but let's walk through it. I'll walk you through the sensibility. We can certainly run a persona if you're interested, but that different lens for analyzing your workforce and what they're likely to prioritize and value considers age and pay and enrollments, how that influences behavior, things that will impact your cost, productivity, and turnover. How do we approach data and better communicate? We can configure data in very interesting ways, and maybe you've seen something like this. As I said, we've spent a lot of time here because we really believe when we were talking to employees and to management, and we were doing open enrollment meetings, and people would come up to us and say, gosh, we've asked for X for so many years and we've never seen us move in that direction. It's back to that, well, that may not be the right fit. It may not be the right benefit, but have we asked the question? Have we looked at the data? Have we really thought about the fact that if 10 years ago we had one benefit plan and that was great, that population has changed dramatically, and over time, let alone anything else, time itself probably says that what we did 10 or 5 years ago, and certainly with the pandemic 2 years ago, is not the same as it was. So let's think about how we emphasize what we do and why. Think of it as a fast forward button to understanding your employees, and that what we do for one doesn't, anyway, I'm not going to go through each of these, but let me land on this one last. Giving you actionable data as the CFO and CHRO is our objective, as we said from the beginning. And it's much more strategic. So this is what it looks like. The age of your employee workforce and what you're going to call them associates. And the service, the number of years. So if you think about that millennial who comes in, maybe they're on their parents' plan or now Z. First experience with benefits, path of culture over benefits, learning to engage. Maybe you hire somebody in the technical category, it's their second benefit experience, skills-based hire. You probably get better engagement rates because they care a little bit differently. Mid-career hires, they've got family concerns. And so, empty nesters, you get the idea. If you think about your new hires, where do they fall in this category? What age groups? What are they thinking about? What's important to them? If you're not looking at your employee base this way, it's a framework we think can be very helpful. And then think of that new entrant, that Z or that X, that now 2 years later is that transitional worker. They might want to focus in a slightly different area. High engagement rate, total compensation philosophy becomes apparent. They're going to be very different to reach, and you want to make sure they're probably, if they've lasted and they're really important to you, they probably have a career path that you want to focus on. And then you've got your founders, culture builders, fire keepers, grandfathering and loyalty. They're probably very expensive. Some of them maybe would be better off in Medicare, so give that some thought. But as we start to shift, what's missing? And that to us is the secret sauce, is this category in the middle of that forgotten middle. Benefits baggage, cultural anchors, medical cost drivers in transition, probably low engagement. Perhaps they're disengaged because of family situations. Maybe there are chronic issues or clinical issues going on. But it's usually a huge percentage of your population that you need to think differently about how to reach. But today, do you know who they are? As I'm asking the questions, my guess is you're thinking about exactly who fits into these categories, but have you taken the time or do you have the tools to really do that kind of analysis? And that we think is the difference, is giving you the tools to think about that. And then again, I don't want to forget about Generation Z, but are you really in a position to attract and retain the newest talent entering the workforce? And I'm not going to spend a lot of time here either. Traditional position and then the reposition of it, what does it look like? And as I said, the Z wants that promotion, as does the millennial, relatively quickly to CEO within the first 6 days. So how do we make sure? And that's not a bad thing. It's just the reality of what we need to be thinking about as we move from a traditional to a repositioning of total reward. So let's bring this home. Let's think about exactly what we do and how we do it. So have your objectives change, but if you look at it, managing cost, innovative engagement, improved ability to attract and retain, and I would say total rewards orientation. How do you streamline benefits and build your technology solution? And then address the multi-generational impact, and also diversity. Are we recognizing all the things that we need to do? And the reality is they're not 1 through 5, they're all number ones. And they can be built into your EVP. The fact that you've got some things that really have to be accomplished is only going to happen if you're doing it with your employees and you're doing it in an engaged way. So we look at it and say, keep your eyes on the target, but realize it's a moving target, and it's moved in a lot of ways very quickly and very slowly over the last 2 years. And so we're back to that, everything is a number one. How do you prioritize it? And the most important thing probably is to think about it and assess and reprioritize it thoughtfully. But if you do it in the construct of an EVP, you're going to have a much better way of saying, here's what's important to us, here's what represents the culture, and here's how it lays out to the individuals who choose us as their employer. And whenever I'm recruiting somebody, I always say, look, this is a two-way interview. It's just as important for you to decide that you want to work for me as it is for me to decide would I want you to work for us. And I think that's what changes, is it's a partnership, and it's one that focuses on what are their needs and how do I do that. And you want to build it out so that it's a target, but you don't want that target out of control, right? You don't want to get a bullseye painted on the back of your suit jacket, and the bullseye clearly planted on you. So the best way to do it is with a laser focused, disciplined strategic plan to get you there, and an employee value prop that will set the tone. Think of it this way: you can't control the wind, but you can adjust the sails. And I think that's really important in terms of framing it. So how do we build a meaningful EFP? We're going to end here. Any questions or comments before I close?
No, you're good.
Okay. Do we still have people engaged, or did I lose people, Mac?
Absolutely, nobody's left yet, so they're still here.
Okay, listen, I'm counting on you guys to land together as we finish up. So, total rewards inventory, compensation, benefits, work life, to me, is that workforce without walls really becomes, something that you need to think about. Is it's no longer that work-life balance. It's work and life have completely merged or submerged. And now the question is, how do we make sure that it's a robust piece of it? And performance and recognition and development opportunities. To me, if you take this simple 5-course meal and figure out the best way to digest it in your environment, you're going to be in a really, really good position to think about what are the ones that are most important, what are the levers I can pull to make sure that our employees get the value that we're trying to insinuate into everything that we do, and how important it is for us to be engaged in that. So what are the steps? Assess the current state, understand where you are and where you're heading. Think about why employees join, stay, and quit. And again, I'd say that this is a little different now than it would have been 6 months or a year ago. So if you've gone through this, I think the best practice would be dust it off and say, what were our questions and answers then? What questions would I add or take away? And how do the answers change? What employee return are you seeking? And then how do I understand the overlap between the employee and the product brand that we want our customers, or the services that the people that we serve through our social mission, right? If we're in a social mission environment, we want to make sure that those that we're serving are served best by the employees that work for us. What do we do? How do we do it? At the end of the day, has a more important game, which is the people that we're taking care of. That absent us, nobody else is going to take care of them. Then you draft your EVP, you've got to test it. Do you have it right? Ask employees, involve leaders and stakeholders from day one. You've got to get the buy-in. Finalize, communicate, communicate, communicate. It's almost like buying real estate. Location, location, location. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Establish priorities and execute, and then regularly evaluate. But it's really important to have a buy-in from your stakeholders. Without that, the rest is not going to happen. So agree on who that stakeholder needs to be, or that group of stakeholders. Agree on what you're trying to accomplish. If you don't have an EVP, is it time? Maybe not. Maybe you're not there yet, but are some of the things we covered really, really good questions to be asking? And if we all get on the same page, does it make it easier when we get to budget time to say, look, we all agreed on what we need to do. We know that turnover is going to hurt us, and we know keeping our best is probably the best investment we could make. How do we make all those things line up in a really, really effective way? We want the tangible and the intangible, right? What are the factors that we need to consider? Then build out that EVP, and I've already gone through what those steps look like. But leadership, the statement, the training with the employees, the communication, and then going back and doing it all over again. So discover, develop, deliver. Go back and test it, make sure it's something that you can communicate, and then think about your component there. We talked about at the beginning, right? Total rewards is no longer just comp and benefits, it's now comp and benefits and flexibility. I showed you the 5-course meal, right? That's really where you probably want to spend your time, but don't forget when you're building compensation models, workforce without walls. Maybe I don't have to hire somebody in the New York metro area because I could have somebody that I hire that's less expensive that allows me to hire more people. In my mind today, it's going to be just as important to have staff supporting people that are high performers as it will be to pay them well, right? It's very possible when people are working at home, they're taking on more because they can't walk over to Joe or Bill and say, hey, could you help me with this? You know what? It's easier if I just stay on 5 more minutes, I'll take care of it. So are our people really running through Herculean efforts to do the job that they need to, which looks completely different than it did a year ago? And how do we reward them? So maybe it's benefits, maybe it's compensation, maybe it's support staff. Maybe it's saying, you know what, they can't do it alone, and I need to send them a lifesaver. I need them to know I care, and I need to make those investments in our brightest and best because it will come back in a huge return. I've already shown you the benefits ribbon. Maybe we expand it out so it's not just 2 or 3 benefits on the medical, but a much broader range so that I can pick and choose, ultimately saving money and using that money for other things, addressing addressing work-related issues for individuals, and then communicate it in a way that appeals to the audience. It's got to be consistent, and it should be internal and external. What do we represent? Who are we? Are we a great place to work for? And then I like to talk about the 3-30 squared. I should be able to communicate it in 3 seconds. Do I have a value prop that everybody would understand by just saying what it is? Could I articulate it in a really meaningful way in 30 seconds, that elevator pitch? And then finally, if I really sat with somebody and I said, give me 3 minutes and let me tell you why this is a great place to work. More importantly, could your employees give you the 3-second, why do I work here? Why do I love it here? Could they do it, could they do it for 30 seconds? And would it align with the way you think about it? And if you say, listen, give me 3 to 5 minutes on why you love working here and what we do for the service we provide or the product we develop or the way we meet the needs of the group that we're supportive of, would they be able to articulate it in the way that you would want to? And would they think about themselves as employees in that context? So wrap up and takeaways. Total rewards does not have to be an all-in or nothing proposition, but it's a great framework for providing value, true employee value. Think in terms of a strategic benefits plan. We haven't really talked about that today, but it's something that we always do. Where do you see your program in 3 years? What's the roadmap for getting there? Nonprofits traditionally very generous with respect to benefits. How do you truly convey that in a palpable way? And has it changed? Should we think about whether or not it's different today than it was, again, a year ago or 5 years ago? Be cognizant of the multi-generational nature and persona dynamics in your employee base. Keep in mind that your employees prefer a label other than employee. 2 critical components, communication and engagement. Remember, communicate, communicate, communicate. And finally, if you formally implement a total rewards program, already have one, think deeply about how it's changed. If you've not yet formally implemented one, everything that you think about should and needs to be on the table. In either case, workforce without walls, important context. Compensation has changed dramatically. Lean in, take advantage. A one-size benefits plan that fits all, fits none. Everyone talks about big data. My recommendation is focus on your data. Use available tools and resources to your advantage. you're going to need to battle the great resignation. You probably already are. You may have heard that term, but it is out there. It is real. It's that war for talent has really escalated. And then finally, recognize that your employees have changed, and while changing and challenging to some degree, leverage it to their advantage and yours. And don't forget the 330. You should be able to articulate it. So should they. And I just want to thank you all for taking the time today. I hope I kept everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want, feel free to reach out to me. But Mac, I'll turn it back to you. And thank you again.
Wow. Let me take a breath. That was well done. Thank you, Joe, for your time today. And we had a couple requests for the slide deck. Guys, we'll get you the slide deck a little bit later, probably tomorrow. But don't worry, I will send it to you. And if you're looking for that certification credit, that poll will pop up here momentarily. But thank you, everybody, for your time today. Joe, I'll see you next time.
Thanks, Mac. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.